Hello everyone, my name is TheMadScorpyon, and welcome to another reset update for Destiny 2. Now, at the start of it, of course, I gotta mention, Act 3 has officially launched, so we can see the conclusion of the Revenant storyline for now, which I say for now, just because if you haven't caught up with the usual streak, we may have the last 3 weeks, air quotes, of story with its main conclusion, but usually there is some sort of epilogue that happens in the last couple of weeks, or at least there has been a fair number of times. So keep that in mind in case the story, when it ends, is a little bit anticlimactic. Regardless, we do have to get into the week at large, which, starting off the week, we have an active booster for Trials, but my loadout screen tells you it's a possibility that is either ranks or rewards or both. Personally, I don't remember if there's ever been a boosted Trials rewards. I think that only counts towards Nightfall so far, although I haven't been keeping up with Trials because it is dog water. I don't think anything should be really paid attention towards Trials. Regardless, we need to get into other things in the world, which, starting off with Nightfall Strikes, we're heading to the Dreaming City. Because this week's active Nightfall Strike is the Corrupted, which once upon a time was the probably most difficult Nightfall Strike to Grandmaster, but nowadays is a little bit more of the routine because it hasn't really shifted, hasn't really changed, and a lot of people kind of know how it rolls. There is a few sections you have to deal with inconvenient champions or very large numbers of enemies like the 2 Ogre Room, as well as the nifty spot where you have to jump all the way through a very large tunnel to a portal, where if you don't make the jump, it's very likely you'll be stranded until the final boss, not to mention the boss itself having many ads per wave, but at the same time, it is pretty cheesable, as well as just the fact that with a coordinated team and a well-built team, it won't be that difficult at all, especially if you plan on running it a few times, hunting the weapon, which is this week's fusion rifle of the Plug 1. That being, it is a very solid one. I forget how recently it has been refreshed, whether it was refreshed this season or last, but it was fairly solid of a fusion rifle. I know fusion rifles in the PvE are kind of mixed response, and PvP it's a little bit more of a presence just because a lot of people like the constrained one-shot ability or otherwise, you know, just straight up lots of damage at once. However, at the same time, it isn't a death weapon, and to the ends of always with these weapons, it is always preference, so if you want it, go ahead. Otherwise, just gut it for the collections, maybe see if you like it, who knows. Swapping over to Crucible for our active modes for this week, we do have a bit of a variety. We still have the 2v2 clash duo sort of Crucible labs going on in case you're looking for a little bit more of a competitive edge to just basic team deathmatch. As well, there is Mayhem in case you want a simple brained just throw abilities at everyone until somebody gets the most ability kills. And there is the usual control that is available, and in terms of the competitive playlist, there is Countdown, as well as usual comp, and of course Rumble as always. And like I mentioned at the start, supposedly there is some sort of booster going on with Trials. We just don't know for sure yet. Allegedly, in that sort of case, rewards or ranks. However it ends up, it's something Trials related most likely. Moving into our weekly rotation activities, starting with the raids, we do have 2 that are good for both red borders, 1 for an exotic in other cases, but getting into it, the starting is King's Fall, because King's Fall does, of course, have red borders. It also has a depths you can hunt out of the master mode if you so wish, and the Touch of Malice in case you need to still earn that, although I imagine many people are doing as they did in D1, getting Touch of Malice for the raid, and then maybe just, you know, leaving it in the vault forever. However, at the same time, it is pretty easy to go through nowadays, even with the updated mechanics. I would say King's Fall is one of those ones that you could farm out pretty fairly easy, and per the usual, any challenges are active, so if you want to farm out the loot, you can hang out, do some challenge modes and otherwise. And next is the Garden of Salvation, which of course was freshly rebranded this season, given a updated list on life with new weapon rolls, red borders to earn and craft, as well as just, you know, a reason to be in Garden of Salvation that wasn't the title or getting somebody Divinity finally. But at the same time, because it is the weekly and it's infinitely farmable, this one, once you get all the red borders, isn't really something to go after unless you want a specific roll of armor or a very specific roll of the weapon and don't care for crafters. However, with Divinity, as usual, it is a quest-related exotic, so there is no random rolls, there is no just running it until somebody gets it. You have to do a very specific thing, so there isn't anything to farm out aside from red borders and maybe a roll on armor. But then into our dungeons, we have 2 that are very different levels of bleh, in my opinion. The first is the Pit of Heresy, which, per the usual, there is no red borders, there is no fairly unique weapons, or at least anything that is worth farming out. Not to mention, it is, at the end, no Artifice Armor earnable from this raid, or this isn't a raid, it's a dungeon, but at the same time, there just isn't much worth going down into the pit for nowadays. It used to be really good for stat rolls, but at the same time, it's Artifice or nothing sometimes when it seems to making the perfect triple or quadruple 100. But then at the same time, with the other dungeon, we do have Spire of the Watcher, which I would say is worth going for a few reasons. Mainly just the exotic, because the hierarchy of needs bow is a very nifty thing. Think how popular Tiku's was, and think with a little bit of skill how much hierarchy can do better. But at that same essence, I would also say it's worth running right now because the Master Mode is once again available for 2 reasons. If you're really desperate for Artifice Armor right now, or otherwise need the Hierarchy of Needs Catalyst because it is only available from the Master Mode of Spire the Watcher. At the same time, there isn't any red borders you can earn, and there is some nifty weapons, otherwise you can farm out for an infinite number of times, but per the usual, it is Spire the Watcher, so if you just don't feel like dealing with a Wyvern that has way too much health for a dungeon boss, you know, just kind of wait for another week. But then in terms of the last bit of exotic mission rotator, we do have Operation Seraph Shield, which of course rewards the exotic pulse rifle anti-barrier specialist of Revision 0, where it is entirely customizable top to bottom, adjusting barrels, mags, stocks, and as well as the burst mode. At the same time, a very solid option, especially in and out of the metas where a anti-barrier was, let's just say, something like shotgun or a sidearm, and you really wanted more range and were tired of Wish Ender, well, this is a hefty alternative, especially with the sniper mode and Vorpal being able to produce some hefty damage against champions nowadays. Regardless, there is also the variety of Seraph weapons from the rebranded Season 10, or Season 10? Actually, no, rebranded, what's the word I'm thinking for? Rasputin Arsenal, old stuff, Escalation Protocol, the rebranded craftable versions of Escalation Protocol weaponry in Destiny 2, as well as the variety of Seraph weapons from the Associate Season, also craftable, some heavy hitters, like that machine gun that I forget the word, but it's 4 times the charm, and target lock at the same time. I almost said null 0. That's not right. But you know what I mean. It's been ages since I actually touched any of those weapons. Some really hefty, good weapons, though, for options. And regardless, again, all craftable, so worth farming in case you missed it from the Associate Season it came out with. Now, into our raids in total, we do have, of course, the variety of challenge modes, which, speaking of variety, we had Varied Geometry for Salvation's Edge challenge. Then going on, Crota's End is still bugged and not giving any challenge modes unless featured. Root of Nightmares is the Crossfire Challenge or Second Encounter Challenge. King's Fall, again featured, so all are active, infinitely farmable. Val Disciple is Defenses Down, which is Third Encounter Challenge. Vault of Glass is the Oracle for You Challenge, basically Oracle Challenge. You can't kill the same one multiple times. Deepstone Crypt is Red Rover, aka First Encounter Security Checkpoint Challenge. I don't know why I said so many words there. Garden of Salvation, once again being featured, means all challenges are active and infinitely farmable. And lastly, with Last Wish, it is the Summoning Ritual. And touching back on Master Modes, it is only King's Fall for Master Mode stat farms in terms of extras. So there's Intellect out of King's Fall and Strength out of Salvation's Edge. And to wrap it all up with the Dares of Eternity rounds, we do have Vex, Cabal, and Crota for the featured modes on Expert Dares of Eternity. Now, with the possible second or third to last week of challenges, we have, of course, well, actually, maybe only second. We have week 1 and week 2 of Act 3 Kell of Kells, basically complete the story however long it takes to get to part 1 and part 2. It basically just grind it out, it'll be fine. And then the Baron of House Light for completing the exotic mission Kell's Fall for the Slayer's Fang exotic shotgun. Nifty thing that I'm looking forward to a little bit. And then, of course, as always, the same mission, but on expert difficulty. Don't know if matchmaking will exactly be available, but at the same time, it's pretty simple just to fire Team Finder and get people to run through with you. Next is the Europa activities, which is the same usual bounties, patrols, bulk events, and lost sectors specifically on Europa. Then the last rites for getting ability final blows and Crucible Gambit or Vanguard bonus progress for Guardian final blows, which is kind of a perfect storm because with Mayhem available, if you want to just Thunder Crash, Twilight, Arsenal, Blade Barrage, Nova Bomb, just throw something that is really easy to just throw and get kills with, this could progress pretty quickly. And then as well, Dark Shadows for defeating Scorn with Void Damaging Gambit or Strikes with the Slayer's Fang. Trying it out, I imagine this will be an easy one to finish. And lastly, Darkest Nightfall. Completing any Nightfall on advanced difficulty or higher. Bonus progress granted for higher Nightfall difficulties, which is basically pretty simple. I think if you just run a single GM, you'll be able to finish it completely. Otherwise, just run a bunch of little ones and you'll get a hefty XP bonus. Now, keep in mind when it comes to the Eververse with this expansion of the Act, there usually is some more, but it seemed to have released a little bit early with the Jade Filament Strand armor set. This released, I think, last week on Tuesday specifically. So this is, I believe, intended for Act 3, as I did get a notification in Destiny that said Act 3 new stuff, but at the same time, it's been out for a minute, but there isn't anything else. Usually there is a few sets of sparrows, shells, and ships, but at the same time, this seems to be it for Act 3. Hopefully there working on, developing Heresy a little bit better instead of making cosmetics. Regardless, in the front page of brightest options, we have Irradiant Cowrite, however it's said, but for the prismatic look, I'm not gonna lie, it looks quite fitting for prismatic class items and prismatic look otherwise. If you want to look something spectacular on Chroma Cloak, that might actually be a good option. Next is Circadian Chill, which is one of those ones that looks frosty, and actually with the Taken set and the armor I got, that certainly looks frosty, but it could help with a little bit of scuff. If you want to look chilly, being clean doesn't say chilly. Next is Dreaming Shimmer, which I shouldn't have to say anything. It is just another one of those transmats that have been reshaped and recolored. Then the Hacker Time emote, in case you just wanted to look like you are, busy doing nothing in Destiny or just busy being idle. And then you just kind of click that button and next thing you know, you are done. Oh, right. I think you just splice the computer and just, say, never mind, screw typing, I'd rather just rip the code. Next is the Lion Guardant shell, which is back from Season Undying. A really old ghost shell now that I think of it. I think this went with the Empyrean Cartographers set that came out with that one season. And moving on, shaders, Grayscale Undergrowth, which is grayscale. They definitely nailed that name. Argent Territorn, which is a little bit weird because it has some sleek silver and it has some nice red glow. Not gonna lie, I'm almost debating putting this on my Titan. I really like how it looks. Revision Zero, I wish it looked better, but at the same time, I can't do anything with that anyways. Tyrian Abyss, which is one of those ones that has a nice purple glow, but it's an odd purple glow that doesn't appear anywhere but like a few bits, tiny bits. I would like it more if it was more purple. And then Royal Protector from last episode, which I believe is supposed to be Shadow Legion, kind of Callus look, but at the same time, it doesn't look anything. It looks like classic Callus, but updated almost. Then for Transmats, the Eldritch Effects, which is just kind of, popping out of a hive tombstone kind of. Then the Warsat Arrival from Season 10, which per the usual is spawning out of a Warsat with some Rasputin effects. And the Crystalline Breakout, which I think was around last week too, in case you want to imitate Nezarec busting out of his crystal prison. Then for some of our mainline items, we have, an emote, which is the multiplayer emote where a bunch of you just, being bright. And I forget if that comes with noise, but, expect it so. Then next is the Hold That Pose, in case you wanted to T-pose on anyone just because you felt like being superior to them. Next is the shell that is just kind of, I believe... Oh no, this is a newer shell from this season. I think this is a Crash the Net or something. It's a weird kind of Retrotron cyberpunk set of shells and ships. It's just Eververse, you know how they work. The Trustworth Clipper, which I believe this was a part of either a 3D printing or like a carbon fiber look or solar set. Either way, it's a pretty sleek looking ship, although as usual, you have to test the shaders just to see how it turns out. It does seem to, that actually seems to be fairly competent when it comes to shaders. Then the Surging Current from Season the Seraph. If you are curious about it specifically, just Arc Sparrow. It doesn't really arc that much on the front end with all the prongs, but it does arc out the back a hefty bit. And lastly, the big ticket item, the 53rd, basically, Vex Network ornament for the Ace of Spades. One of those ornaments that, if you had the money, I recommend just kind of going and getting it now because it is a gorgeous ornament for one of the best weapons of Destiny history. And lastly, and least, the I know how to say Ouroboros, but Ouroborean, there we go. But basically, the snake eating its own tail in a projection that you can ignore as always because who actually cares about ghost projections? With that, that is the end of this reset update of Destiny 2. I wish there was more in the Eververse, and I will hopefully have good hopes about the future of Destiny with the end of the story, but we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe Slayer Fang will carry, who knows? We'll just have to, of course, get that done. With that, my name is TheMadScorpyon. I will see you in the next video.